Hey friends, I have had some thoughts kind of collide in my brain this morning, and I have not worked out where it's all going. So I'm coming to you live in the working it out process. And I really don't, but basically what has been kind of circulating and what makes me intrigued by what I'm observing in my thought process is I've been, in terms of what I've been consuming as far as literature recently, I think I might have mentioned on this post, I listened to Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I finished that maybe about a week ago. Started this German book on narrative meaning making, how essentially human beings are hardwired to make meaning via story, and they are doing just a really it's really fun to hear them lay out the kind of history of the world in story. And we're getting into the kind of modern social media age now, and talking about how our underlying storytelling hardware and kind of proto archetypal stories are still at play in a very sort of immediate and relentless way in the social media age, those two books sort of took my mind in the direction of real intellectual, thinking about new ideas, perspective shaping, examining. Both of the books have in common an emphasis on self-reflection and looking at the ways we interpret the world and the ways that the assumptions we make about the world, the ways that we are sort of like baked cakes as far as how we see certain things. And both books, I'm only halfway through the second one, but certainly Kendi's book, it's challenging us to take another look at that and to really have a willingness to challenge how we navigate the world and how we perceive the world. The courage to challenge our own perceptions, our own filters, our own karma, which leads me to the kind of other half of what's going on in my mind right now, which is right before I listened to these two books, I was listening to a lot of Sadhguru, listened to two books of his essentially back to back, Inner Engineering and Karma, both of which are also deeply, obviously, emphasizing self-reflection and seeing through our conditioning, as any sort of serious spiritual path will encourage us to do. Getting a sense of, how do I filter the world? What is my conditioning? Not just what does the world look like to me, but why does the world appear this way to me? And then, with the ultimate intention being, is that what I want to, is that how I want to perceive the world? Is that optimal? Is that true? It's not as simple as, certainly on a serious spiritual path, it's not as simple as, well, how do I want the world to look? Like, if you've got if different forms of conditioning are like different shades of sunglasses, it's not so much, I want that one. Yeah, that looks good. Thumbs up. It's more about how much of reality am I perceiving through this lens? What does this lens of a narrative or of a conditioning give us the capacity to see? And I find myself again and again coming back to my sort of background with Ken Wilber as a philosopher, who was someone who was really pretty forward thinking about how to organize our understanding of worldviews, essentially kind of amounting to a criterion for a form of hierarchy of worldviews, but not simply a top to bottom hierarchy, more of like a nested hierarchy where the more inclusive, the more capable of inclusion a worldview is, the larger it is, and it therefore contains smaller and, in some ways more limited, but certainly less, worldviews with lesser capacity for inclusion. And the spiritual journey, the spiritual process, as I understand it, is that process of little by little seeing where we're at. How does the world look to me? Here are the contours of what I think, right? We're kind of in this big of a bubble. What is that bubble made of? Why does my thinking stop here? And at a certain level, it becomes not so much a matter of just seeing specific thoughts that we think, but seeing patterns of thought. We have to catch ourselves going around the same merry-go-round ride a few times before we can go, oh, I feel like I'm going in circles. It's like that sense of walking in the desert, and you think you're going, and then at some point it's like, these hills look familiar. Shit. Have I gone in a giant circle, right? Which is, can you imagine walking through the desert and realizing you were walking in a circle? You just burned all that energy and all that water, and you just landed back where you were. Terrifying. And that is a relatively frequent experience in the spiritual process, because we're gonna manifest the limitations of our thoughts. That is life. I mean, that's what Sadhguru talks about when he talks about all manifestation is cyclical. Everything in the existing world is bound by cycles. Everything from the smallest scale to the largest scale happens in cycles. So there's really no way to grow beyond a given cycle until we see the cycle operating. And then we can go, wait, whoa, I'm going in circles. Look at me. And kind of move beyond that. And I think in both of the books that I have recently consumed, that mechanism isn't necessarily explicit, although I think it's sort of on the horizon in the second book, the two that I'm now reading. But what struck me today, where this all kind of came from, is I just had this sense that the movement from Sadhguru's kind of like karma, cosmic vision world of then, and which then is very much applied to, human beings and our day-to-day practical life, but from a perspective of the infinity of conscious experience. Moving from that into the realm of deeply intellectual, academic thought in some ways, very lucid and penetrating thought, and really, you know, well-researched, well-reasoned, elegantly expressed intellectual ideas, the context shift. It's like over the last week or two, my sphere of psychic exploration has shifted to that realm. And sometime today, earlier today, I was just noticing that and going, that's really interesting. It's interesting to watch myself. And it was because I had an enthusiasm for it. It was because all that time and sort of like all that time in deep no time gave me like some fuel or some space to have energy to go really deep intellectually in a couple of big ways, listening to these other books and just taking time to ingest them and internalize them. And it's like now I can tell that by the end of this other book, I'm going to be ready to go, okay, but now let's back up again and let's see the big picture again, because this is again totally just my own myself following my own intuition, but I sense that the shift between those two contexts is incredibly important. Because if you think about it, on the intellectual level, the level of academic intellectual thought, since we know from the greater kind of spiritual work we've done that all thought is cyclical, those domains, there's no way out. There's nowhere, they're not going to get out of their cyclicality. The only way to take those domains to expand them is by bringing consciousness, bringing a broader awareness to the domain. And so, which that doesn't mean that there's a problem with the work that's being done there. In fact, the work might be vital. You know, the work of creating a computer is awfully specialized and awfully, creating a computer is probably actually at this point could probably do that a number of different ways, but I'm just saying there's specialization and there's a very contained domain within which you're working if you're doing something like building the next Apple computer. Doesn't mean it's not important, doesn't mean it's not incredibly vital and an essential service to the human race. It just means you're going to be doing it in a very specific sandbox. And the ultimate utility of all that work, whether it's intellectual or physical or whatever, is finding that place where we're in service to a greater and greater realm of inclusion. Greater and greater, if you want to call it worldview, but sphere of care, and ultimately sphere of identity. You know, are we identified as an American, as a citizen of the world, as conscious beings on this planet who might be part of groups of conscious beings on other planets? I'm just saying there's really no theoretical limit to how great that perspectival expansion could get. And the movement between the intellect and the spiritual is it's both exciting for me and enjoyable, and I'm inspired by it. And it also feels like, I'm reading about the war and the global economy and China and Russia and Europe and America and South America and India. There's Africa. There's so much happening, and you read the news and it looks acute. It looks like we're moving towards something potentially we're in a volatile place. And so I think remembering that every domain of pursuit ultimately has to take a place in that largest possible context of our own perception, which is the way we see the world, who we are, who's included in us. When we say we, who do we mean? How much of we is included in that we? It affirms for me what this work is about, and really kind of inspires me to stay at it and to find intersections between that, what I call spiritual work or inner work, and all the various domains in which maybe that perspective would be helpful. So that's where I am today, folks. Thanks for watching. Much love. I appreciate you. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.